Hello, this is me, Sam here for WoopaGaming, and today, well, welcome to Bukkit plugin tutorial episode number 7. Before I start, the one thing I did miss from the last episode, just on your superheat listener, there is a sort of superheat users contains the event.getPlayer. We want to change this to getDisplayName, just because obviously this new list is a list of strings and not players, and that's if you changed it last time and you're wondering why it wasn't working, that's why. Anyway, in today's episode, a lot of you have been requesting databases, and I did say I'll go over databases in the last tutorial, so I guess that's what we're going over today, but in particular MySQL. Now, it's going to be quite difficult, I guess, if you're not used to SQL syntax. So what I'm going to try and do is try to explain it in the most simplest way possible, in order that even if you're not too sure or what to do, I'm going to try and go over some of the basic concepts that you have like a stable platform, and then you can progress from there. So I'm just going to teach you like the gist of it, basically enough to sort of make the program. But if you want to learn more, obviously you may want to look at other things, but I'll give you like the structure. In order to do this, actually, I will use this resource, so I'll provide a link in the description, and basically all this is just a couple of Java files. If you download the zip here, it's just a couple of Java files that you can place in your workspace. So we have here the source and then code, so we're going to drag and drop our code in the source folder here, copy files and folders. Okay, so this is a source from Husky, he's an author on Bukkit forums, and this just provides us with a nice MySQL class which we can use just so we don't have to bother writing out this, and then it will just simplify things much nicer. Of course, we're going to still have to write some code in order for it to work, but this does a lot of it for us. And there is also SQLite here as well. We're not going to be covering that in this tutorial. However, if you are interested, it will work in I guess a similar way to what we're doing now. Okay, so in order to start it up, I guess we're going to create a new class, just so we have a nice class where we can contain all our MySQL well, functions and stuff. So we're going to call this MySQL Manager, and we're just going to create a constructor class. So let's just, like we did with the listener, have a constructor, so MySQL Manager, and it's going to take the argument of superheat. There we go. And then on our superheat, well, let's start. Okay, so our superheat, well, we can define it here. Public MySQL Manager. Well, let's call it MySQL equals new MySQL Manager this. Okay, so that just sets it up. So we have our instance of MySQL Manager in the main plugin, so we'll be able to use it later. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is just define a MySQL variable. This is the object that we just created, I guess, just from the source code I provided, or Husky provided, I guess. So we're just going to start that, and then we're going to create a new function called public void setup database. So this is a function we're going to call when our plugin initializes in order to create our database. So the first thing we want to do is set the variable we have to a new MySQL instance, and this takes a few arguments. So this takes 6 arguments. The first one is a class which extends Java plugin. So you can see here on the MySQL and the things that the plugin, the host name, port. So we're going to input all those. So this .main localhost, I'm hosting the server locally. Obviously, if you're hosting it externally, then you can use the IP there. the port, which by default is 3306, and obviously change it if yours is not that. The database name, so it's Superheat. Obviously, I have created this. So we go on my thing. I have got a table. I've got a database called Superheat on my local host. You'll have to set that up yourself. We can, however, set up tables and delete tables from this manager. The username, which for me is root, and the password for me is also pass. Just because it's locally, I have no problem really of anyone trying to get in. Okay, so once that's set up, we need to import. So this will be your code.husky.mysql. So this is what we copied over from last time. Now, just one thing I'll just quickly brush over. This isn't a dependency. Obviously, your users won't have to have a MySQL library because it's all built into into Craft Bukkit. So all the drivers and stuff are already in there, and we've got these files literally in here too, so we can just use them as we require. Okay, so now I'm going to open a new connection, so db.openConnection, and that's a function in the MySQL which just opens a connection between the server, or the plugin, and the MySQL server. And then we're going to create a new statement, so statement equals this db.create, we'll get connection first, .create new statement. I'll just create a statement. There we go. And what we can do is basically execute things to the server. So, okay, one thing you have to make sure is that this is a java.sql statement. There are other ones that you may want to use, like it says it here, JDBC, I can never remember all of those letters, but you want this one here. And also there's a problem in the fact that sometimes it will have an SQL exception, so we're just gonna put throws declaration to our setup database, and then we can handle this in the main function, and then we're just gonna execute our query. So there's three sort of things you can do with a statement. So there's execute, execute query, and execute update. Now, to start off with, execute query is like for things like select. You're trying to get information back from the SQL server, and execute update is where you update it with no reference to what's coming back. So things like insert, delete, create, that sort of thing. So that's update. And also there's execute, which just executes the SQL string, and then it will return a boolean if there's a result set, and if it's true then it returns a result set, but you obviously have to get this manually, or it will be false if there's none. So this is going to be creating our database, so we're not going to expect anything back, so this will just be execute update. Type. Now this takes a string argument, and this will be our sort of Sql syntax. And the best way to imagine this is imagine it like a command on your Bukkit server. So you have / commands, obviously, and this Sql server also has commands which you can run. So think of them like that. And the command we want to do to create a new table is create table, and then we're going to add a if statement. So if not exists, we're going to call it, I'm going to use single quotes here, superheat log, and then we're going to define the structure of the table as, well, first column will have name, and that's going to be a varchar of length 32, and then we're going to define another one, uses, and this is going to be an integer. So I'm just going to explain what we're actually trying to achieve here. Maybe that would be useful. What we're going to do is create a log of whenever someone uses superheat. So whenever they mine a stone with a golden pick and it turns it into stone still, then we're going to increase their uses to 1, basically. Like keep increasing it by 1 each time. That's what I'm going to be doing. So this will be useful if you want to make a login plugin or anything that requires any sort of stats associated to it. Okay, so just explaining what we did here. So we create a new table if it doesn't exist. This is the table name, so superheat.log, and this will create it in the superheat database, which we've defined up here. And this will have 2 columns. The first one is name, so this will be the player name, and this is just a varchar, so a string, and then how many uses is an integer. Okay, so that's the first sort of thing we want to do, is set up the database. We're just going to add another function just to close the database, and it's a good idea generally when you're plugging the tables to close the database, just so you don't have any closed connections, which is not good. We're just going to create that new function there, and that just closes connection. So now let's go back to our superheat.java, and well, on the enable we're going to add a new call to the thing. So this.mysql dot what I don't know for I named it setup database. There you go. Setup database. So that will call this function and set up the database. And then on the table we're going to have this dot close this dot mysql dot close database. Okay. So you notice you're getting a red line here. This is because we've defined our setup database to throw an SQL exception should anything happen here. So with the statement. So we're going to have to try and catch this. So if there's a problem with the MySQL setup database, then we're going to catch an exception. So first of all, let's just print the exception. So error plus E, and we're just going to also provide a sort of info argument, I guess. Could not connect to database, or could not set up it, basically. And we're just going to change these to warnings, and that's not going to be a problem because what we're going to do, warning. That's not going to be a problem because what we're going to do here at the start, we're going to have a public boolean which is called log. That's going to be set to true. And basically what we can do is that if there is an exception, we can't connect to the database, then we're just going to set this log to false. Okay, and I probably should not use, let's just use log db, just change it just to avoid any confusion with the function here. So we've created this, well, this boolean logdb, so that in the rest of our plugin we can then use whether or not the database has been connected or not. So for instance, on our superheat listener we can then check if it's login and has been connected, then we can obviously do some stuff to do with the database. If it's false, however, and it hasn't been connected, then we can just ignore it completely. We'll get into that in just a minute. Before we do that though, we're going to create just 2 more functions. The 2 functions will be, we're going to get the amount of uses from a certain player, and we're also going to update the uses as well. So we're going to create the get uses first. So this will return an int because we're trying to get the int column of the uses. So public int get uses, as we're going to call it, player p, and there we go. So we're just going to have to import our player object. Okay, so first of all, let's just get the string of the player name and p name. So p dot get display name dot to lowercase. And the reason we're just doing 2 lowercase is just so when we set stuff in the database, we're just going to make everything lowercase. Not necessarily in a way, but it's just good to have everything as lowercase, just so when we're checking it and updating it, we're always using the lowercase version of people's names. Okay. Also, we're going to just put a little check in here. Now this should never really be run. We're just going to add it here just because. So just have another check that says if the database is not connected, then it's going to open the connection. So if somewhere along the lines, then somewhere something went wrong and the connection was closed, and we didn't really know about it, then it will just check the connection if it's still open. So if we go into MySQL, you can see there's a check connection, so it returns whether or not connection is null or not, which is a boolean, and if it's null, that means there is no connection, and so it just opens another one up. Like I said, this shouldn't really happen in practice, but we'll just set it there just because. Now I'm going to create a new statement. This will be similar to the one we got before. However, this time, instead of having an execute update, we're going to have a execute query. So I'm going to do it like this. So I'm going to do statement.execute query, and then we have our SQL command, and the command I'm going to use now is select. So like I said before, I'm not going to go fully over all the syntax for SQL strings and whatnot, so you're going to have to sort of learn them yourself, obviously, because there's so many things you can do with them. To go over all of them will be, well, take too much time, so just going to be going over insertion, selection, update, and creation of tables. And obviously there is dropping and deletion and whatnot, but let's just ignore that for now. So I'm just going to write this out first, and then I'll explain it in a bit. So I'm just going to write this out here, and that's that, I believe. Okay. Oh, it helps if I end the quote. Okay, so what we got here is it's going to select star, so that means all columns. So in theory we could just put uses here because that's what we're interested in, but we're just going to use star now just to show you how you can get different columns from the table. So select all the columns from, and then this will be our table name. So this one we created earlier, superheat.log, and this where is very important. So if we don't have this where here and we just remove it, then it's just going to select every single entry in a superheat log table. But this where is sort of like another if command. So it's where the name is equal to our player name we got here. Okay, so it's going to return all the entries where our player name is the same as the player name we defined. So that could be multiple entries in theory, but the way we're going to set this up is that it's going to only be one entry. The other thing is that it's going to have another unhandled exception, so we're just going to add throws that's got SQL exception here as well, just because. You also note this is an execute query. So because of an execute query instead of an execute update, we get a result set back. So if you like hover over this, is that a good way of doing it? It tells you what it returns. So here you can see result set, and then what the package name, and whatnot, and it tells you a little bit about it in the Java doc. So this says it executes the given SQL statement, which returns a single result set object. So what we can do is create a new result set object. We're just going to call it RS, and set that to be the statement that returns. And you're going to have to have I spelled that right? Oh, that's important. Put that. Okay. Well, it should let us. Yeah, I might have to import it manually. So let's just have a look here. So java.sql.statement, and then result set. So we can click this here. It will open up a web browser, and then we can see what packages it in java.sql. So we can type up here import java.sql and then results set, I believe. There we go. So I'm not sure. Normally Eclipse will normally import stuff, everything for you with Control-Shift-O. For some reason it wasn't working there, so we just imported it ourselves, like so. Okay, so now that's our result set. So what we're going to do, if the player isn't in the database, then we're just going to return 0. So we need a way of checking to see if this result set has any entries. So the way we do that, it's not the only way, it's going to be doing if rs.next. And I'll show you why we do this in a sec. So we're going to return 0. Okay, so if rs.next, then we return 0. So first of all, what is rs.next? So basically this is a result set. If you've used like line buffers and string buffers and like reading of files and stuff, then you might be familiar with the .next. And this works in a similar way. So the result set will work as a list of all the columns, I guess, and all the entries. And the way you access to do it is by doing rs and then .get like integer or get string, and that will be based upon where you currently are in the result set. And the rs.next is a boolean which returns whether or not there is a next result. So if there is a next result, or if there isn't a next result, then it's going to return. So if there are no results, then it's going to return. This is going to return false on the first go, which obviously with the exclamation mark does the inverse. So this is true, so it returns. Also at the same time, it sets the sort of the pointer, the marker, to the next line. So I believe it starts let's say at -1, and then it goes to the next one, which is 0, which is the first result. So at the same time as checking it, we're also going down to the next line, which will be our first entry. So then we can actually do return.rs.getInt, and then the column index, or we can just use column name uses. Okay, so what we've done here is that the rs.next, so first of all we're checking to see if there is a next element. If there's not, then we're returning. If there is, then we've gone down one entry to the first element, and then we're getting the integer value of this column name uses, and that will be integer value because of our column name is called uses and is an int type. Just to show you what else we can do, rs.get, we can get arrays, we can get big decimals, we can get blobs, we can get all sorts of things, URLs. Just maybe a useful one, maybe we get string. So that works exactly the same, column index or column label. It's up to your preference whether or not you want to use index or not. But there you go, so that will get the integer for that player, with that thing. Okay, so that's our get uses, so that will return how many uses the player's had. Now we're going to add another function where we're going to update the player's total. So I'm going to call this one update player, and we're going to set up the sort of same sort of system. So we're going to copy and paste the first start of this because we're going to set their name to lowercase, just to consistency really. Again, check the connection. We're also going to create a new statement, so I might as well copy that. Maybe we could have put the statement up here, but well, that's fine. Just create new ones for now. And again, this is going to cause an error, so we have to throw an SQL exception should it. Okay. We're also going to get the uses. So this is where we use our previous command. So int uses is this dot get uses p. Okay. So now we're getting the uses. So this should return either a real number of how many blocks a player's mined using superheat, or it will return 0. So with this we can use a else if statement. So if the uses is not equal to 0, then what we're going to do here is update else. We're going to insert, and let's just explain what this does here. We haven't actually written out what we're going to put yet. So basically, if their uses are 0, then it will insert a new row into the database with the initial starting value of 1. Else, it will update the already existing row in the database. So if you're using like or writing a login where you log blocks all the time with timestamps, it may be idea just to consistently use insert. But because we're sort of keeping this and updating the things, we're going to use update. So let's do update first of all. Now both of these statements we're going to need will be execute updates because we're not going to require anything back from the server. I'm going to write this out, try and explain it as we go. So update is the command. We then select the table as always, so update superheat log, and then this is what we're going to set. So we're going to set the uses equal to, and then we want to actually get the uses +1, because we're getting this is what the user currently has as a number of uses, so we're going to want to add 1 to it, so they mine 1. Okay, so that's that bit. Then we want to have another cover here, and then very similar to our select, we're going to have another where bit, and this will be exactly the same as what we have up here, so we might as well just copy and paste that into there. So what this does is just executes an update, so it's updating the superheat log table, and it's going to set all the uses to uses +1. So in theory it will update all the uses in all the columns if we didn't have this where bit. So then we add the where bit, and it chooses the right column to update, so the one where the player name is right. Okay, and then we're also going to have a statement, so this is another so this is going to be another execute update, okay, because we're not returning anything. And this is what we're going to do to insert a new entry into the table. So insert into, and then the table name, so superheat log, and then we're going to choose the name and uses, because we're going to want to define both of them, and then we choose the values. So this is going to take a bit of a while to type out, so let's just do it like this. Okay, so let's explain what this does. Oops, let's just have a semicolon there. So this will insert into, as it suggests, into the superheat log table. Again, we define it up here, and then this is the sort of columns we're going to use. So we can use names, which will correspond to the first entry in our values, so p name, and then uses 1. So we're inserting a new row into our database which has the player name and then the initial starting value of 1. Okay, and that's all we've done with the MySQL manager. So this should all work hopefully okay. This is all we need. So we've gone over how to create a table when we're setting up the database, how to close it, how to select from it. Obviously this get uses, you can extend it, and if there's multiple entries then you just have to do rs.next to get to the next row. But again, if you might want to look into that more if you're interested in this. Then we have the update player as well, where we update the value of a row or update a column in a row, and also add a new row. So we're going over the main sort of commands, I guess, and you can see, kind of have an idea of what's going on. But we're not actually finished yet. So okay, so in our superheat we close the database, we connected to it, and we have our log.db is true. We're just going to add a new thing here. So this is our actual login function. So if this.main.logdb, so if this is true, then we can update it by doing this .mysql or main.mysql.update player, and then the player, so event.getPlayer. And again, because update player throws an exception, we're going to have to do a try catch. Interesting place to do that. So let's just add it manually. So we're going to put try here, and then catch, and then it will be SQL exception E. I'm going to have to import that. Have I got it right? Let's have a look. I probably spelled it wrong. SQL exception E. There we go. I think that's better. Okay. Okay, so we're going to import that, and then we just go and copy our log from here. I'm just going to paste it in here. Just change the main bit here so we can use our log from the main superheat function. thing, and then we're just going to change could not connect to database to could not update player, and then we'll add the event.get player name. Okay, so what we've done here is basically if we're logging stuff in the database, so if this is true and we connect to it, okay, then we're going to update the player, and if there's an error for some reason we can't update it, then we're going to print the error. Okay, so I believe that is all on the config side. Just to let you know, obviously you're hard coding localhost and the ports and stuff straight into your plugin. So if you're going to do this for like a Bukkit dev, and obviously you might want to add this to the config. So we're going to have a config like this. You'd add it very similar to this use curl, but you'd obviously have localhost and the port and all this sort of stuff. Obviously it's not a good idea to do that in general, but it's fine just to show you the database sort of side of it. That's what we're interested in, really. Okay, so let's export this, and while that's exporting, I'm going to load up my Minecraft server. Superheat, finish. Yes, okay, and then let's load up the server, and hopefully, if I have, so I've got my XAMPP. If you want to, I think I had done a tutorial previously on how you can install XAMPP for Windows, and you can have a sort of testing ground at least for your MySQL databases. So you can see here, loading Superheat, and there we go, enabling Superheat version 1.0, and then Superheat has been enabled. Someone said you don't have to log your enabling, and yeah, that's true, but obviously this tutorial is good just to show you how to use log, and for our benefit I guess we can now see that it actually has been enabled and has been running our code, but there you go. Okay, so I'm gonna, oh, it's almost loaded, might as well just continue. This has been a very long tutorial. I do hope that I explained over some things, explain things well enough for you. If you do have some questions, I might start a little thread on the Woopa forums, and I'll provide some source code as well, because I know a few have been requesting that. I just didn't want people to initially just copy and paste the source code, because I know that's what I normally do, just go to the last tutorial and copy and paste when I'm doing stuff. Okay, so let's take a look at our database. So I'm just going to hit that. So there we go. Fantastic. We have our Superheat log here. If we browse it, there are no entries at the moment. But if we look at the structure, we can see the name, the varchar 32, and the use is int. Okay, so now let's go in game, and we're going to get this, and we're going to activate Superheat, mine it. Oh, yep, turn it into stone, always good. And now let's go to browse. Oh, there we go. We've got one new entry. It says Samkir and use is 1. So let's look at the thing. No errors. Okay, that's great. So obviously it's inserted, but let's just make sure it's updated too. So let's put down a few. So we're going to mine 4 now. So hopefully our uses will now say 5. Refresh. Mode of truth. Yep. Fantastic. Uses of 5. Thank goodness for that. Okay. So yeah. So we've tested it out. It all works okay. Obviously you might want to test it out further if you're developing a much larger scale than just a tutorial, but it seems to work okay. So that concludes, I guess, today's tutorial. It's been about 35 minutes long. Do apologise for the length, but hopefully I've gone over a little simple and brief overview of databases and how to use them. It'll be very similar to do the same with an SQL. Like, you just have to create a new SQL instance instead of a MySQL. You also provide a file instead of the local host and port. We can see how you would use this in order to make other plugins and stuff. So you can basically base your things on these commands we've used and expand upon them for your needs. Just trying to think of an example, for instance. So, for instance, you could have a, well, for me, I used to develop Levelcraft, and we had a experience system which was based on MySQL. So we had tables for every skill, and then we had players and their XP. We also had indexes and stuff like that, but that's by far too advanced for this tutorial. But you know, it should give you a brief overview of what you can do with it. So yeah, hopefully that was okay. And now I'm just looking for something to do for next week's tutorial, or next time's tutorial. Some people have been requesting like things like essentials. That's obviously essentials is a massive plugin done by many developers, and it's taken many years to get where it is today. I don't think it'd be very beneficial to go over how to develop an essentials clone. I can go over like things like how to maybe do multiple commands and other features and API that could, you know, make a simple like half essentials thing, but have like a, I don't know, a 1% of the features sort of thing. But any suggestions, I shall do them. Obviously, databases are suggestions, so hopefully those that you have asked, that would be helpful. Okay then, so thanks for watching. This has been me, Sam here, for WoopaGaming, signing out.